Hey, fellow traveler, welcome to Third Eye Awakening. This is a podcast all about spiritual and psychic awakening, where we talk about things like the shift from 3D to 5D consciousness, the nature of time, space, the universe, the multiverse, multidimensionality, starseeds, the Akashic records, all the things. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. I appreciate you so very much. All right, let's get into it. Hey, beautiful beings. Welcome back for another episode of Third Eye Awakening. I am your host, Amy Belair. Before we get started, if you want to create me on Instagram, you can check me out at thenorthstar.love. And if you like what we're talking about here on the podcast and you'd like to be part of an interactive community, then come join my free private Facebook group called Soul Space. Just send me a request and I'll add you. I would love to have you there. Hi, beautiful friends. I just quickly want to preface this episode by apologizing for the terrible audio quality. I just started getting the information to record while I was driving, and I didn't have the time to pull over, and I didn't realize how awful the audio was going to be, how terrible the background noise was going to be until after when I listened to it. And I tried to clean it up, but honestly, I'm not that tech savvy, so I wasn't able to figure it out. So yeah, I'm really sorry for my shitty amateur sound as usual. I'm so intimidated to talk about it. So intimidated. I've not wanted to talk about it because I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with the idea of making other people uncomfortable with this awareness and with talking about this. But at the same time, I feel like I'm just being shown that we have to acknowledge it. The time has come. They're playing their hand now much more openly and brazenly than they ever have before. And I think that's why I am being prompted to examine it more deeply myself and then to share what I'm finding. Because the time has come for us to decide that no, we're done with this. It's over. So, the dark agenda comes from a groups of other dimensional beings, meaning that they exist in what we would consider non-physical dimensions of consciousness, as well as incarnated in physical dimensions of consciousness. They are not native to this planet, but then again, neither are we. And they have recruited many, many, many humans. We are hybrids of these beings, as well as many other groups of beings, many other races of beings. And they have recruited many humans on the planet to advance their agenda, to be on their side. And their purpose is to dominate the planet. And it is nefarious insofar as the acts they commit against humanity and the earth are exceedingly cruel and absolutely horrifying. But from another perspective, it is not nefarious from their perspective insofar as they just do not sense they do not have a heart center anymore. These beings, they have chosen to bypass the fifth dimension consciousness, which is heart-centered consciousness. And in order to completely ascend within this universe anyway, through the dimensions of consciousness, one has to pass through the fifth dimension, which is the remembering of ourselves within the fragmentation that is third dimensional existence and consciousness. So meaning we still remain individualized, unique perspectives, but we come to a place through the portal of heart awareness where we remember ourselves as a unified being of consciousness, like a truly like of one material, and that material is light and love. And I don't mean that in a new agey kumbaya way. I mean that ultimately the only material that creates everything is light and love, and those are the only words I can think of to use to describe it, or grace and love, grace, light, and love. It is a pure substance. So through the fifth dimension of consciousness, through the heart portal, we remember ourselves and our place in the schema of creation, and that portal allows us to access all of the other levels of creation and to use them to their fullest magical capacity, both as physical beings and non-physical beings. And these groups have chosen to reject that portal because it is like the ultimate rebellion. Essentially, it is the ultimate rebellion against the natural current. It's like somebody wanting to paddle upstream. It's being in a river and moving with the current in the natural direction, according to the motion and the patterns as set out by the genesis of all creation, and saying, fuck that. I want to go in my own direction. I want to either stay in this place, in this dimensional bandwidth of consciousness, or I want to travel upstream and I want to see what's over there. I don't want to go in the direction you're making me go. So it is an act of free will, which is one of the beautiful parts of this universe and our experience here. And it is a desire to be self-determining, to not go in the direction that was predetermined for us by just the arrangement of this version of the universe within the multiverse. So it is an act of rebellion. It is a decision to bypass that portal, because once you go through the third/fourth dimension is the hardest one to get out of. It is the place where we stay for the longest period of time as souls, cycling through that as conscious awareness, because in the third dimension, it is so real. It is the dimension of form, and the fourth dimension is the dimension of time, and we get so enchanted by so captivated by the experience of form and the diversity of perspective that we forget who we are. And it takes, for most souls, it takes many incarnations in the third and fourth dimension to get to that fifth dimensional awareness and consciousness and remember ourselves and who we are while we are still individuated into form. I hope you're all staying with me and this makes sense. And Earth is not the only 3D physical planet. There are many places that the third dimension is experienced and physical form is experienced. But we're on Earth, so I'm just going to stick with Earth. So once you go through the portal of fifth dimensional awareness and you truly integrate into fifth dimensional awareness, everything else is so accelerated to get to the sixth dimension. I already am able to reach the sixth dimension from here just in recent weeks. It's just so fast because the higher up you go, even though it is non-hierarchical, the higher up you go, the less captivated by physical density you become, and so your vibration moves faster and faster, and your expansion of consciousness moves faster and faster. So the fifth dimension is really like a funnel. It's a mini kind of black hole sort of return to 0 point consciousness. So instead of allowing themselves to move down into that funnel, into that portal, into the next available expansion of consciousness within individuality, these beings with the dark agenda have decided to resist it and paddle backwards upstream, which requires a tremendous amount of will and energy to maintain that, because you never get to rest when that is the choice that you're making. You never get to rest. The current doesn't stop, and so you never get to rest. So they require a lot of energy. I kind of have lost the original point that I was trying to make. I think this stems from saying that we see them as nefarious, those of us who have not been recruited to their cause. But from their perspective, although they commit horrible, absolutely disgusting acts of cruelty, they are not nefarious. They are rebelling against. They are honoring their own free will and their own right to self-determine to an extreme, and which requires a lot of energy. And Earth is a planet of rich prana, which it is harvested as a resource. You can see this in the ways that we have organized ourselves. We absolutely pillage the earth for her prana, her resources. And human beings are also a rich source of energy. And that energy is harvested from us through our fear, our anxiety, our violence, our anger. Less so anger, because anger is generally more of an empowered feeling, whereas fear is more of a victimized feeling. So it is mostly like fear and terror and pain and victimization and anxiety. All of those experiences of suffering. We produce a very loud frequency when we're in those states, and it is the perfect. We can see it as food for them, but it is more of a fuel for their agenda, for their constant, unending need to swim upstream, requiring so much energy. And they do not have the energy to sustain that themselves, and B, they are not interested in exhausting themselves. The whole point is they wish to experience the height of their own grandeur, but it is not the true grandeur that is naturally, inherently available to us as a birthright. It is a synthetic grandeur. And when you think of like the most egomaniacal people and their sense of grandeur and grandiosity, that's the kind of vibe that it has. I don't know if any of you have seen that super cute Pixar movie from like freaking 2000 or something like that. So long ago now, Monsters Inc., where the monsters in another dimension feed off of the screams of children, the terror of children. Their job is to go in and scare the shit out of kids, and they bottle up the fear energy, and they use that to power their whole universe. And that is such an accurate depiction of what's going on here. Only, of course, it's like a kid's movie, so it's like terrorism light. It's like terrorism in an adorable way. And you see that in that story arc, their mechanisms that they use are no longer powerful enough because they are constantly, like I said, paddling upstream or swimming upstream. The need for, and it's unsustainable. Like, it just literally is unsustainable. And there comes a point where there is not enough energy to maintain that, because a rest period never occurs. And so the energy it took at one point to paddle upstream is no longer sufficient. It just does not cut it anymore. And as in the movie, they get to this point where they can no longer power their city just with regular kid screams. And so secretly, the president of the company, who presents himself as this, great upstanding man or monster guy, he and another agent of the company, they're in the process of inventing a terror extraction device where they kidnap a child to test it out on, where they are putting her in a metal machine that is going to torture her, essentially. They only allude to it, but it's going to torture her and torture a new level of terror out of her. And they're planning to switch over to this form of energy extraction. And this is what's happening now, where the things that produced the energy needed by these groups for a long time no longer are working for various reasons. And so they need to devise more and more extreme ways of harvesting our psychic energy in the form of fear and terror and pain, in order to continue with their progress in the direction that they want to go. So back to the real world, no longer discussing Monsters Inc. So the dark beings, the Cabal, the reptilian, draconian beings, they don't have heart centers, so they cannot feel empathy or compassion, and they do not, therefore in their minds they are not nefarious. They don't, from their perspective, they don't see themselves as being benevolent, but they see themselves, it's just a distorted view of self. It's a view of self that is like rebelling against the tyranny of like the cosmic universal flow of evolution. It's like you can see it. You can see it in the analogy of like Satan rebelling against God. Satan being like God's, right hand angel or right hand man or whatever, and then or Lucifer or whatever. I haven't studied the Bible since I was a kid. But, and then being like, wait, why do I have to do everything that you say? Like, I want to experience my own power. That's an analogy. It's not exactly like that, because the universe is not God per se. Like, the universe is not decreeing that we all must move in this direction because I decree it so. It is more like the direction that was set in motion by the creation of this universe. So it is an inherent direction of evolution that all consciousness goes through, and no one is imposing it on us. And yet this dark cabal reptilian agenda sees itself as rebelling against the tyranny of the inevitable. It's a lot like humans who want to fight the fucking physical fact of aging. Like, aging is a fact. It is just a thing that happens as a byproduct of life in the third and fourth dimensions, you know, and you don't stay youthful forever. That is just that's not how things work. And it is not a tyranny on the part of any level of consciousness that has imposed this reality on us. It is just simply, you know, form evolving through space and time. Like, it just is what it is. So this dark agenda is to rebel against the air quotes, very dramatic tyranny of the natural laws of the universe. And they cannot sustain it forever. They don't have a heart center. They don't feel compassion or guilt or anything like that. They don't see human beings as anything except objects or resources, or the earth, or anything else for that matter. And they desire to feel powerful, like all powerful, like Jafar in Aladdin. I'm going to be referencing a lot of kids' movies, I think, in this episode. Like Jafar from Aladdin, when he's all like, "Genie, I want to be the most powerful sultan in the world." And the genie turns him into that, and then Aladdin tricks him into being like, oh yeah, but you know, you're never going to be as powerful as the genie, because the genie is the one that gave you the power. And then in so doing, he's able to trick Jafar, because his lust for power and superiority is so out of control that it has become his Achilles heel. Anywho, so words like reptilian, I don't even like using that, because I have sort of been given information or led to information that shows me that reptilian beings are not all nefarious. So I just want to throw that out there, like the same way that, you know, a lot of Caucasian people who have a lot of privilege and agency are, you know, nefarious agents in the world, in the human world. And yet, of course, you cannot blanket statement say that all Caucasian people are all members of one race or anything. It's just, yeah, it's reductive. So the agenda is to power themselves in the opposite direction of natural evolution, and they require a lot of energy, and they have no compassion at all whatsoever. And they have recruited a lot of humans who also have those qualities of a lack of compassion, a desire to experience power, a desire to, avoid aging and believe they can stay youthful forever, a desire for fame and glory and wealth and whatever vices appeal to them. And of course, when you're appealing to, when it's a group of beings that desire power above all else and have no sense of balance, in terms of seeking to be of service or leave an impact on the world that leaves the world better off than it was before. They end up being very good at amassing and experiencing wealth and power because they are they don't have any limitations of what they will do to obtain it. They don't have a moral code, I guess is what I'm saying. So nothing is off limits. These dark beings, this dark energy, has been with human beings on Earth since our Genesis point. And it is the force behind all of the wars, the conflict, and the cruelty that is inflicted by humans upon humans on grand scales and on individual scales. They play us like fiddles. They harvest our energy of pain and fear and terror. And yet they don't have to get their hands dirty, although they will, and they can, and sometimes they do, but they don't even have to. They don't have to. They've figured out how to play us against each other with a divide and conquer strategy. It works for them over and over and over. They don't need to reinvent the wheel. It works. They highlight to us our differences and fan the flames of fear and cause us to harm each other. It is the energy behind the religious crusades. It's the energy behind colonization. It's the energy behind genocide. It's the energy behind the Roman Catholic Inquisitions, which for me is always, it just feels so resonant and personal because of that past life memory I had of being alive during the time of the Spanish Inquisition in the dungeons, tending to the wounds of the tortured. That's a dark energy. That is a dark, dark energy. It's the energy behind the Jewish Holocaust, which, by the way, has never gone away. It never went away. The belief system that was played in order to generate the Jewish Holocaust is not gone. It's the energy behind enslavement. It is the energy behind conquering each other. It is the energy behind the way that we treat animals. It is the energy behind the way that we treat the earth. It is the energy behind the ongoing genocide of indigenous people all over the world. And it is not inherent to earth. It is not inherent to human beings. It came from somewhere else. And and this isn't passing the buck because we are the ones who buy into it and thus do it, perpetrate it ourselves. But this is not our blueprint. If you want to know more about where this energy comes from, Google the Lyran Wars and the Orion Wars, and you will find some history. It predates human beings on Earth, and in fact, part of our origins come from these beings. We are a hybridized race of human beings. There are other human-type beings on other planets within other star systems all over the galaxy and the universe. We are just one, and this story has happened many, many, many times. It's so important for us. It's not even important. It is essential for us to recognize that we are being played and to no longer participate. We have to stop participating. There are infinite ways for us to be played against each other because we are unique individuals and we have diverse, there's as much diversity and perspective as there are individual beings on the planet. And that is where they use our diversity, our individual experiences against each other. Against us, against each other. And so, for example, all they have to do is seed our social media and our mainstream media and our movies and our documentaries and all the ways that we receive information. Just quietly, gently seed it with notions of, for example, political correctness and political correct speech, or the idea of trigger warnings and safe spaces, and the idea of having to tread carefully and use politically correct speech so that you don't offend anyone. They use the notion of being offended and triggered to distract us from what is actually happening. It's very convenient and so easy for them to do. And I'm not saying people shouldn't have feelings at all. So please don't get hung up on that. I'm saying that then our feelings are used against us to become inflamed and angry with the person or the people or whatever who triggered us. And so, for example, if you're using the topic of non-binary gender identification, transgender, all the LGBTQ, all that stuff. So that is valid. Any individual's perspective and experience is valid. It is valid for somebody to feel that they do not fit within the binary gender identifications, that like we are all born with a biological sex differentiation, but that gender is a social construct on many levels, and one may feel that they just do not identify with that, whichever sex that they were born, the gender association doesn't fit them, or neither gender association fits them. And that's totally fine and valid. The dark forces see this and see the opportunity there to strum that string of pain, strum that string of feeling like you're an outsider, like you don't fit, like you are constantly feeling like a freak, but wanting to fit and wanting to find community and feeling like the social constructs are wrong and limiting, but feeling like an outsider. They can sense that ripple in our energy field and they think, perfect. And they start strumming that string, and they start strumming the strings of all the people who are threatened by the existence of somebody who does not identify with the binary gender social construct. There's so much diversity and perspective that it's so easy for them to do this. And then they pit us against each other, that the group that feels that they don't fit into the binary gender norms feels threatened and by the idea of being forced to pick one or the other, and pick the one that they were born into and just play that role and be good and fit in and belong. They strum that, and then they strum the feelings of being threatened by bucking that narrative within other groups that feel like, this is going too far and you're going to bring anarchy into society and nothing makes sense. And if you're born with male genitalia, then you have to accept that you're a man, and so on. They strum that. It's so easy for them. It's so easy. And they create division. And that division is then fanned and turned into a flame that distracts us from what is really happening. And it becomes so easy for them to enact their agenda and basically rule the world behind the scenes, because we're too busy arguing. And for what? We are more similar than we are different, even with the diversity of perspective that exists. We are far more similar than we are different. And truly united we stand, and divided we fall. Divided we are conquered over and over and over. And of course they do this on larger scales, where they fan the flames and turn them into wars. Where they fan the flames and turn them into genocides. And the value in that is keeping us distracted, keeping us turned against one another, keeping us in low vibrational states of the more disempowered emotions. And at the same time, they get to feed off of the energy of fear and pain and terror and trauma, as well as continue to cull the human population, as well as make a lot of money. As well as seed future wars. Seed the grudge and the division that will bloom into future wars. In addition, they have deactivated our DNA. You might have heard before that we actually inherently have 12-stranded DNA, and they have deactivated 10 strands so that we only have 2 available to us, for most of us, although I will point out that most of us have never seen our own DNA, so we don't know where our individual DNA is in terms of reactivation. And I receive the intuitive intel that many of us have brought on more of our strands, like turned the program back on and brought them on board. And that is such a factor of the mass awakening that's happening. But the whole point is that we are very much like farm animals to them. It's a perfect analogy. When in Western society, in mass farming, the way that we use cattle or pigs or chickens or turkeys, it's deplorable. It's so deplorable. There aren't words for it. we dishonor them. Dishonoring isn't even the word. It's deplorable, but we dishonor them. We do not honor them. We do not honor them and the gift that they offer us on multiple levels. The life that they are forced to live is horrible, and they are not allowed to be the fullest expressions of what they can be on the earth. There's such a difference between the energy of a free wild animal and a factory farmed prisoner animal. And that's the difference between us and the way that they intend to keep us versus us and what we can truly be. We are a resource. We are you could consider it a food source. And we are deliberately disconnected from our full capacity of existence by receiving narratives that program us to believe that we are less, to settle for mediocrity at best, to hope for better things. Hope as in a disempowering state of being, but accept, so much less than what we can have, do, and be. And that's in a good case scenario. Many people are kept in abject poverty, trauma, terror, suffering, disease. And if you can't see this, I don't know where you're looking because it's so evident. And I guess I'm saying that because I know, for example, I love my parents so much, and I know that they don't see it. But also it's not my job or my right to force them to see it. But if you are here listening, that probably means that you see it and that you are ready to see more of it. So I will not go into the history of these beings and our creation because it's going to make this podcast way too long. But if it's something that you would like me to go into, just reach out to me on the social medias and let me know, and I will do it. But there are so many resources already available through the interwebs that, I won't go into it now, and you might feel like, nah, you don't need to hear it from me. Thank you so much for being here with me through this episode. You are beautiful, magical, and powerful. You are so appreciated. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share. And I hope to catch you on the next episode.